almost drawing to a close now of 2 super interesting days, and I'm really happy to see that we still have some people that are with us, and I hope that we can make this session before the final keynote an interesting discussion. On the stage I have with me Louisa Heinrich, I have Jose Sepulvedra, and I have Dr. Lee Eun, and who will shortly be giving a short introduction to themselves and a little positioning on the topic of our discussion today, which is the panel discussing meaningful use. And after the introductions, I'll just give a little bit of an intro, and then we can get going on the questions. For people who have just come in, do you have information access about the Pigeonhole application where you can post questions? Will that be shortly put on the screen? So we're really hoping to get discussion with the audience. So we have, here's the information. So if you can go online, you can actually post some questions, you can vote on questions and get engaged with the discussion. But first of all, I'd like to hand over to Louisa, if you could just give your introduction and a few statements.
Hi, thanks, Lorna. I'm Louisa Heinrich, and my company is called Superhuman. If you saw my keynote this morning, I think some of you did, we're not called Superhuman because we think we're special, but rather because we believe that technology has the capacity to give everyone superpowers, but only if it's applied correctly, and we do that by putting people first instead of the technology. So I am here at IoT Asia, I suppose, to promote the human perspective. As the minister said yesterday morning, and I could not agree more, it is culture that will determine the success of all these technologies that we're talking about. And I've heard a couple of things even in the last panel, right at the tail end when we came in, that I find quite heartening. I think it's good that we are actually saying things like, just because we can do it doesn't mean we should. So yeah, that's me and my perspective.
Okay. So my name is Pepe Saluda. I'm the director of ATIC. ATIC is a center that works on augmented reality, virtual reality, and IoT. So we focus on translating technologies. We take technologies from universities and try to translate them to meaningful products to the market. And when we were, I was called for this panel and preparing this, I came with some questions. So some things that I think we should explore are like, when we design a process that is, instead of automatic, natural. And with this I mean that right now we have new technologies, and what we are doing is making the processes that we had before, we are making them automatic, but we are not revisiting if these processes are the right processes. So with technology we might come with much more meaningful processes that take out like take out inputs that were not needed. Another thing is how can we design systems that feed back to the system. So when we design something for users, use the data that the users generate to help themselves in the process. And the third thing that I would like to explore is how can we make systems that not only produce value for ourselves. So when we produce a system, we as a company, you will think, okay, I'm gonna be looking at my revenues. But if you think about producing value for the community, there will be other people that want to use your services for different things, and then your service will become better. So I would like to explore these 3 things in this conversation.
Yeah. Hi, my name is Lee Eun, and I'm an engineer by training. I'm really not a lecturer. I can't talk about human-centered design from lecture point of view because I'm not a trainer. I'm a practitioner, so I spent a big part of my career dealing in different industries, from hardware to software to clean tech, and most recently I'm heading up the Innovation Management Office for MetLife, which is in fintech. So I've really had a very diverse background, have witnessed a lot of products being made, and have seen even more fail. And one of the key learnings I come to is that the most important thing to design for a successful product, whether you call it IoT or any other product, is to start from what's the motivation of the customer and what's the job to be done. And in fact, my position is that the whole human-centered design is actually not that new, not completely new. I mean, we've heard of, you know, similar type of inspiration from different industry. Software, we talked about use cases, we talk about good UI, UX. In hardware, we talk about, you know, how to design human-machine interface that make things work, and so on. So, you know, at some level, I think that human-centered design is straightforward, but yet it is very hard. And we don't see a lot of good practice. So the question is why? My hypothesis is this. The most important thing is the dichotomy or the conflict between corporation and customer. So the key in good design is you got to design something that's intuitive for the customer to use, convenient to use, intuitive. However, as a corporation, we want to optimize on designing something that is easy to build. Easy to build is different from easy to use. And because of that, you see a lot of, you know, what I call bad design. And I can come back to this later, but my bottom line here is that the theory actually is very simple, but in practice, it is very hard.
Thank you very much for your introductions. And indeed, we've been hearing these last 2 days of an amazing array of technology developments. This is the third year that I've been here, and we see that things are moving at a fast pace, and we're seeing business models very much focused on sustainability, cost savings, efficiency, and it's getting better and better. And as Louisa mentioned, we're seeing a little bit of a discussion on, well, is this the only business model that we should be aiming for? But at the moment, it seems to be the right first step. And I think with this panel, I'd like to also sort of challenge the efficiency-focused business model and start looking at other forms of value. We had the opening keynote speech talking about culture as a valuable aspect. But we also have in the design track and also in the Smart Retail Forum, we've heard a lot of different perspectives about customer centricity and bringing people back into the heart of the system rather than automating them out. And the wonderful keynote this morning talking about people, and I love this quote, "There's no such thing as normal." So my first question is, how can we start designing and developing a system that's creating value when there's no such thing as normal? Louisa.
I think I've got to do this one because I said it, don't I? I think the beginning, I very much agree with you, Dr. Eun. Is that right? Did I do that right? Okay. I think that one of the challenges is that we have so this is part of the conflict between engineering and design, is that there's a desire on the engineering side to perfect every system, to finish everything. It's not good enough until it's 100% complete, whereas human beings do very unexpected things. If you look into we're natural-born hacker monkeys. If you look around at the physical world, you will see loads of evidence everywhere of people taking things and putting them to uses for which they were never intended. Some of these ideas are actually better than the ideas the makers of the thing had, and they wind up leading to new products. I think that we need to build that capability into a lot of the digital and technology-based products that we make, by which I mean perhaps the secret is to not try so hard to finish and perfect everything, because there is no such thing as normal, by which I mean no two people think exactly the same thing about exactly the same thing. So if you make a single system, it's never going to work for everyone, nor should it. The idea is to create enough openness, enough space for the human to engage in it in the way that makes sense to them. And that means perhaps stopping short of this sort of mythical perfection, my opinion.
Nothing to add.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay, then, yeah, I think maybe adding to that, Dr. Eun, I think it was interesting to hear about your experience in different domain areas. But I think actually everybody on the stage here has worked in different domain areas. And I'm seeing the discussion about why are we having these domain area splits? Do you see a value, or do you see that you're being able to take learnings from one domain area into another?
Yeah, I think it helps to take perspectives from different things. My career has been a disaster. I have been jumping around every 4 years to a new thing, going from genomics to video games, from video games to nanotechnology, from nanotechnology to IoT and things like this. So yeah, I think it helps you see things in one area and extract nuggets that you can use in another area. And when we were talking about the technology before and how do we make technologies that the company is thinking about the company and the user is thinking about the user, there is a very interesting parallelism with agriculture. Like we eat iceberg lettuce. Iceberg lettuce is very popular and all the supermarkets have it. And this has no feeding value, no food value at all. They don't even feed it to pigs, okay, because it doesn't grow anything. But it's so easy to produce. It's really, really easy to produce. So for the company, it's great because they are selling you water at the price of lettuce. So it's good to have these bringing ideas from different places, because then you can see, oh yes, I can understand that, yes, here the company is doing something just because of them, and they don't care about like if the person is fed or not. And the same thing happens with many digital and hardware products.
Well, I would maybe like to challenge that perspective a little bit, because you're looking from the point of view, is they're not caring that they're not bringing nutritional value. But is it not that they're actually, they've discovered another meaning or value that they're delivering?
I don't know if I'm going to answer your question, but there's something, he just said something really, sorry, I'm doing the whole lateral thinking thing now too. There's, oh damn it just went away. I hate it when that happens. Sorry, ask your question again.
We're all on the jet lag team here.
Sorry, guys.
Maybe whilst you regroup, Dr. Eun, what would you like to say on that?
So I agree that mixing different industry domain is actually very powerful, because like what Jose said, what you learn from one can be applied to the other. So I always, one of the advice I actually give people is about, when you look at your own skill set, you should think about what's your functional competence and what's your domain competence. And actually, at any one time, you could probably only switch one. You either switch from, say, engineering to marketing in your industry, your domain, or you switch from marketing to, or you switch, the same marketing skill, you switch in, from food into, say, pharmaceutical or another domain. But it is really important to kind of, understand both, because having deep knowledge in one domain, say, trains, give you intuitive sense about what's going to work or not work in that domain. And yet having functional skill like marketing tells you what you can apply, based, in the different industry you have. So when you switch domain and you switch function, what happens is that you basically broaden the set of things to bring it into any new domain that you come into. And especially something like IoT, I think the earlier group talked a lot about, it's not just about hardware, it's not just about sensor, it's not just about a single technology. And in a lot of cases, it's about the systems. And so having multiple domain and multiple functions actually greatly help you see the opportunity or the direction that you might miss otherwise.
Great, thank you. Louisa.
That was actually, I think, a little bit more interesting than the thing that I was going to say, but I still think it's relevant, especially because of what you said there at the end. Please don't have gone away again. So that whole thing about iceberg lettuce, it's interesting because nobody thought about that until quite recently, until maybe the last 10 years, when it's become much more sort of trendy and acceptable to try to eat more healthy and to eat more nutritious foods. And now the sales of iceberg lettuce in a lot of the world are declining rapidly because people have worked out that it has no nutritional value at all. And I think there's a parallel here to be drawn with the world of technology, and one of the reasons why I think it's very damaging to, when we're designing physical connected things that are going to live in the real world without screens that aren't broadcasting that they're tech, we need to be very careful, because we've gotten away, let's face it, with a lot of bullshit in the digital world. We've made a lot of really bad interfaces that people have dealt with, like they dealt with iceberg lettuce, for a really long time, because there's not been a choice. For a really long time, there was no other way to do, for example, banking than to use the horrible online interface that your bank put in front of you. Now that there's more choice, of course, people are making decisions based on those choices. But it's a very different order of magnitude from the real physical world, where people are accustomed to doing things the way that they want to do them. People are not used to being told what they can and cannot do with their irons or their toasters or their doors or their bicycles. People are used to being able to do whatever they want with the things that are in their physical environments. And I think that for that reason, we need to think not just about the technology systems, but the human systems and the ecosystem that a human being has of all the things that are around them and that are important to them.
Mm-hmm.
I think this brings us to something that is very interesting. If you take the similar processes across industries or across like different ways of doing things, in different industries they will be doing the same thing, but there will be different variations. But if you take across and remove all the variations, what it is left, it will be the natural way of doing things. So the natural way of doing things. So now you go to everywhere and you will see like people like this. And being like this, we will be recorded in history as the stupid people that were looking like this.
I saw a really nice one today. I have to say this.
Yeah. So,
Did you get that?
So we are doing this now in a very artificial way, because we have this new technology, and what we are doing is like what we used to do before, but we now have this technology and we have to do it through this means. But soon we will see that this mode of interaction will disappear and the natural way of interaction will appear, which will be like when you are going to do something, you will do it like without interface. It's a smartphone, but it shouldn't be called a smartphone because it's not doing anything smart right now. No. It's like, yes, the phone is not working for you, you are working for the phone.
Mm-hmm. I would love now to dive in and see if we can get the discussion going to maybe help the audience, or for people who are curious about, well, how do we find out what this natural interaction is? Because it's a lot, we're hearing a lot of theory and a lot of wonderful ideas. I think people are going, wow, hey, yeah, that makes sense. And then you leave the room and say, well, what do I do next? Can we maybe have a little bit of like, well, how do you go about understanding the meaning, these natural interactions, and the integration into the messy analog world of people?
Personally, I'm a big fan of observation. And I don't mean bring people into a lab and make them live there and hope for the best. I mean actually get out on the street and watch people in their natural habitat, watch different people doing the same things, and you'll see a lot of variance. So you're right about the natural way of doing things, but the natural way of doing I don't know, making toast for me might be different to the natural way of making toast for you, and we're not going to see these differences if somebody sticks us in a lab. It's much better to go out into the real world and watch people interact. I've said many times to students and to workshop people that if you, next time you go to the airport, for example, instead of looking at your smartphone the whole time, if you watch people in the way that they're navigating the airport or failing to, you'll have at least 3 ideas of how you can improve that experience. Those observations, I think, are the most critical.
Can I see a show of hands? How many people have actually done that in the domain area that they're working in? Go actually and spend a day or a weekend or an hour just watching? Quite a few. How many have the idea of saying, well, maybe I'm going to try and do that? Great. So maybe we can.
People think it's bullshit. Okay.
No one would put their hands
No one
up. I
would,
didn't
yeah.
ask them. But maybe we can, for the people who are thinking, I'd like to try that or another method, maybe just get little tips or information or experiences on how you do that. A little bit of practical.
Yeah, I'll just start with an example.
Great.
That if you guys had observed, if you were not on your smartphone when we came in, you would have observed that 3 of us are actually struggling with this microphone to see how to turn it on. And I don't know if you can see it from there. There's a red light on the bottom. And there's not a clear way of where to do the switch. And this is actually the most fundamental of human-centered design. When you pick up a microphone, what's the first thing you want to know? Is it on or is it off? The light was red. Now, this comes to the other element. There are certain things that we are conditioned to think. When we see green, we think it's on. When we see red, we think it's off. We're just conditioned to do that. And so, again, if you just go through very simple thing, you get to a simple way to design, and not having anything on here. Of course, you don't want to have here because you don't want people pushing on it and then accidentally having it be off. But again, just observing, if you had observed this, you would be able to basically design a better microphone next time. And so,
Yeah, I'll add to that it's probably more important to me holding the thing to know that it's on, that it's important than to you. But you're the ones who know that it's on because you're the ones who can see the actual light. So, brilliant piece of design.
But it's connected to the earlier panel, which I thought was a really great point, is that we're designing for technology or we're designing for the use of the technology. And it is that kind of sometimes very difficult distinction between the two, because obviously we've got electronics, we've got wires, we've got buttons, which maybe don't fit. But I think we're sort of promoting find a way of getting the light facing the speaker and finding a way of the button communicating the on and off, even if the technology doesn't allow it in the first place.
When I go around looking for answers for these things, I just try to identify things that annoy me. And like, for example, when you have to register for something, why do you have to register? I mean, you are there, your phone knows that you are there, and some electronics can know that your phone is there and you are going to be there. So you are registered already. When you have to pay, okay, I just did this and I just order with my phone. Why don't you just? So there are many things that can be like substituted and let to do by the machine. So I just look for things that are kind of like, oh, why do I have to be waiting in this line when this could be done automatically? And I'm happy that I can identify many things that I know can be substituted.
Actually, to add to that, I feel like, being a good designer actually is the biggest pain in my life. Because I look at something, I said, God, this is so poorly designed. Could have done this. I had someone come and fix the chair and told them, you know what, you should have put spring washer in there because the way it's designed, this thing will always fall apart. So it's sometimes a curse because I just kind of see improvement in everything that, is possible.
I agree. I think the other really important thing to say, because there's a lot of non-designers I think in the room as well, is that it's not necessarily just about us. So actually you just reminded me of a really good example. So talking about things that, why do I have to pay for this? Why do I have to explicitly blah blah? So I have a friend. She actually writes the code that makes CGI go. So she's a pretty hardcore geek, and about 5 years ago, I think she was in the States, and she went to the Apple Store, and this is when they first launched the real-world interaction where you don't have to deal with a member of staff at all. You go in there, you find the thing that you want, and you pay for it on your phone, and then you go away again. And she said that it creeped her out to the point where she was standing on the street with this laptop charger thinking, have I just stolen this? Have I paid for this? What's happening? And so I think at the same time that we might be annoyed with something and see an opportunity for improvement, these are the parts where we need to give people the opportunity to feedback how it makes them feel, because sometimes seamlessness is not really what you want. What you want is beautiful seams. What you want, I mean, the whole world is full of changes. We are also conditioned by centuries of evolution, millennia of evolution, to identify changes in our environment that then signal that a thing has or has not happened. So for things to just sort of automatically happen without any signals for us can also be quite distressing. And I just wanted to add that it's not just about making ourselves happy, although you're right, Lee, it is a total curse.
I think what you said is interesting. There are some things that you need feedback.
Yeah.
Like you don't want to go out of a store and you say, "Oh, I pay for this. I want you to steal it," but I freaking pay for it. But what I'm talking about is like, for example, we all probably are using the Wi-Fi here. So the Wi-Fi here, we have to turn on the Wi-Fi in the phone, and then we have to go to the website and we have to click accept. And why?
Every time.
Why?
Every time.
It's free. It's open. Why do I have to click 2 times?
Yeah.
So I'm referring to those kind of things. I mean, there are things that are open, are free. Why do I have to do this? For other things, I understand, yes, you want to make sure that you have paid and you want to make sure that, or that you have received the service or something. But for other things, it's like, doesn't make sense.
Can I add to that? I think the key to that, I know why you have to open it so many times.
So do I, in terms of conditions.
Yes, TOS. Right. So I think the other thing to consider is
I'm not going to read them.
I know, you just hit agree. My attorney said it would be much better if I let you scroll down and then you do agree. And I said, I'm not going to do that. Because that,
It's not going to work.
well, legally that would protect us better than if we put it, So I think it comes down to regulation as well. And I think early on the person talking about drones, I think in a lot of cases technology moves faster than regulation.
Absolutely.
And then regulation makes it difficult for us to design a seamless experience.
I agree with you, but I at the same time that I'm often frustrated by that, I think it's probably quite a good thing, because let's face it, if policy making changed as quickly as technology, we'd be living in a constant state of chaos. So I think, and I genuinely don't know what the answer to this is, but I think there is a real challenge to somehow translate between the world of policy making and the world of this is what shit's like on the ground. I don't know if you know about this, and I'm going to have to look up the name of the artist because I can't remember, but a friend of mine was telling me about this art student who had never noticed she didn't know what those things were that you had to do when you got a new iPhone or whatever. And somebody explained to her what a EULA is, what an end user license agreement is. And she was so fascinated and so angry about this that she made her final art project for university. She got all of these end user license agreements and printed them up and framed them and put them up and displayed them in such a way that you could not move from room to room without agreeing to things that nobody wanted to read. There's got to be a better way of doing this, and I think this is a design problem. It's also a legal problem and also an engineering problem and all kinds of things, but there must be ways that we can bundle these things together, and I think it's a good example of how design goes beyond the hardware and the software.
That's actually a great movement on to the next question that I want to, or the next line of questioning.
Can I comment on this last one? Yes, for once.
You can,
I
yes,
think
of course.
I think all these agreements are there for us not to read them.
Yeah.
Because if you read them, you wouldn't use the service. You wouldn't use nobody will be using Facebook. Nobody will be using Gmail or any Google services. If you go to your phones, if you have an Android phone and you go to the maps, and there is a new thing that will tell you where you have been, and it's scary. It maps all the way. So if you have been in some place that you shouldn't be, don't let your phone
So
around.
can I maybe dive in there actually, because I think this is there's a wonderful part of all of these systems, and that's people. I think a lot of people have seen it on Facebook a couple of years ago when somebody will read these terms and conditions, they will find out the bit that's actually crossing the border between acceptable and creepy. They will make a message and they will send it round, and it will go around virally, so everybody will become eventually informed. And I think with a lot of these we see that some people do manage to get the will and the means to inform people when it's going over, crossing the line, or artists actually have a good role in that.
question is, does it make a difference?
That is a very good question. And this leads on to the point, because what I wanted to do was to try and ensure we don't get stuck on interface design, but also on design of meaning, because I think a lot of people are very interested in the next steps of developing the meaning of Internet of Things. And I've noticed that anytime you mention the word design, a lot of people say, oh, you're the people that make things look nice. And I think it's extremely important to sort of get some understanding of the role of design methodologies, prototyping, and all of the design thinking in actually understanding the value and the business models, not just making things look nice. So if you could maybe...
Well, I'll pick up from Lee's first point on that one, because there is always going to be a tension between what the business wants and what the customer wants, or what the government wants and what the citizen wants, or even what one person wants and what another person wants. And part of the role of design, of good design, is to affect that translation, to build bridges between those things. Because if you can create some set of methods by which value is exchanged, and both parties get something that they want, then it's worth their while. So if the business gets a lot more customers, or knows that it will get a lot more customers, or sell a lot more to its customers, that means that it's worth their while to invest more money in making that experience happen so that the customers will spend that money. Or to take a slightly less less obviously commercial example, if so that data from Google, which is, I admit, very creepy, but there are probably parts of it, maybe, I don't know, for me there would be, there are parts of that data that I'm willing to give over because I know that I get value from it, because I know that perhaps it will learn how fast I walk or what my preferred routes are, and therefore be able to make better recommendations to me or things like that. But I think it's okay as long as there's a value exchange there, but once that value exchange is exceeded, the balance shifts and it's no longer okay for both parties. I think that's part of the... Does that answer your question, Lorna? Good.
So I think, yeah, it's an exchange of data, but I see that they get more than we do.
Well,
So,
at this point, yes, I'm not disputing that.
So I see that right now we are giving away like a lot, and a lot of people, and especially young people, don't realize what they are giving out, and don't realize that that will stay there forever. So I'm really glad that I'm not a teenager now, because I did a lot of stuff that I wouldn't want to perpetually be there.
I think this is a very good point. This came up in the design track as well, and I've heard this a number of times from leading security experts at leading companies who I won't name, saying that young generation do not care anymore about privacy. However, there was recently, I've seen 2 exhibitions by artists. One of them, they trawled, got data from Facebook of anonymous people they didn't know, and they made exhibitions with full life-size posters around major cities. And of course, the people whose data it was were completely confronted by this misappropriation of their data, but bringing it into the physical world. And it made them realize, oh, actually, this is what's happening in the digital. And I think this is a very important part about watching people's behavior and not assuming their behavior just based on digital.
Exactly, and I think there's a big difference between not caring about and not understanding what it means. So, you know, I didn't know about that project. I'd like to know more about that. But the example that I was going to give is teenagers who, you know, whatever, they put up loads of pictures of them doing stupid things when they're young, being drunk at university, whatever, and then they get out into the real world and they realize they can't get a job because the recruiters are looking on Facebook. And yes, okay, in European Union terms, that's illegal anyway, but the reality is that for these people, it's never occurred to them what the consequences are, because no one's ever explained it to them. It's not part of our educational system. It's not part of the way that we inform ourselves or one another. And I think that, to me, perhaps even more critically than regulation falling behind, is that our information gathering and our education has fallen behind, and we're not able to keep up with the basic tools that we need to understand the technology that we're engaging with.
And actually linked to that, an example, I think it was 2 weeks ago, the French police sent out a message to all parents to stop putting pictures of their children on open feeds on social media.
Yeah.
So it's, yeah.
My business partner he's a bit of a genealogy addict, and he's been trying to trace his family tree, and as he, we've always been concerned about privacy issues. What does it mean to own yourself in the digital age? But sort of in an abstract way. And as he was researching his family's genealogy, he was finding people. He said it was amazing and terrifying to him the amount of information that he was able to get just from public feeds on Facebook about people that he'd never met. Distant cousins 7 times removed. He knows where they live, what their kids look like, what time they come and go from their houses normally, what their homes look like, where the valuables are kept. All of these things just from photos that they have available on the public internet. And I'm sure if they knew that, they'd be mortified. But who's going to tell them?
Yeah, there's one project in the US where they had people coming into the shopping mall. So from a distance, they do the image recognition, they go look, and then people approaching them and says, oh, so you're from this, and just reciting their history to them that really freak people out, but with the intent to educate. But it's amazing what you can find.
I'm just having a look at the time now, and I really want to start looking at some of the questions from the audience. I don't know if they're going to be coming up on stage, or I have them on the screen here.
There we go.
So, yeah. So with, I think actually connecting to this, I'm going to go for the one with the 2 votes first, is what are some assistive technologies that backfired, and what lessons can we learn from it?
I think a very interesting example on technology is, it's not assistive, but it kind of is a medical technology that I think what happened was is the invention of the ultrasound scanning. Okay, so in China and India, this tool became really popular. And what happens in China and India is that families prefer to have boys instead of girls. So they had this technology that is the purpose of the technology is to see if the baby is healthy. But in these countries, what has happened is that what they identified is like, okay, if the baby is a girl, there will be an abortion. So this has created a disparity between males and females in China. Is like about 40 million more males than females in an age bracket. Mm-hmm. So this is a social impact. Imagine having 40 million extra guys, no girls.
Mm-hmm. And actually, this reminds me of a discussion. It's about the role of all designers and developers in not thinking about the solution, just the solution you're trying to solve, but the knock-on effects. And I think one of the great ones is about designing the car. Did Henry Ford at the time also think about designing of traffic jams?
And the consequences.
And the consequences.
And another one. No,
so maybe more how can actually processes and development actually start to think of the bigger picture of the consequences as well as the solution.
And another thing that is happening now that I see, and I think is not very much studied, is that we work every day with Facebook, Google, and all these technologies, and all these technologies are kind of profiling us and helping us by giving us some artificial intelligence that just recommend us. And when we make a Google search, if you make a Google search and I make a Google search, we will get different results. So I'm getting the results that I like. So in a way, this is kind of destroying our capacity to search. Mm-hmm. And in the future, we might have the problem that people are like starting. They are not trained to come with great ideas. They are, because the solutions are there and are in my little world that my profiling system has created.
I think that's a good example of a technology that succeeded too well. I mean, that's an example of a much broader issue, which is the whole recommendations, any kind of collaborative filtering or assisted filtering of any kind of content anywhere, whether it's Google or Netflix or, you know, back in the day, TiVo, is that it makes your world smaller and smaller. And when I was at the BBC, one of my previous jobs, one of the questions that we were trying to address is how can we provide an escape hatch for people? How can we prevent these recommendations that we're designing for them from making their worlds feel so small and claustrophobic that there's nothing new coming in anymore? Do you have one? Because I always also
I think, yeah, I mean, I agree with you. I think what's likely going to happen is that at some level, what the internet has done is it actually create the ability for niches. Like you can have a polar view and you can find people who would have that view. And then on the other side, on the recommendation engine, is making us more and more like, people like you read this book, and then you see all the other book, and then you read the book. You know, where is discovery, right?
Yeah, there's I wanted to put another thing out there about assistive technology, because I think there's another really important point, which is the one I'm gonna cite is augmented reality, which everybody says is still coming and has been saying that for 10 years or more actually. And the reason why
it is coming.
yeah, someday. And you know when it's going to come? When this isn't the interface. Because this is a really shit interface to be finding information. I do not want to be putting this between me and the world. It's a problem. And it's a really obvious problem when I do that, but it's a conversation I've been having for 10 years and nobody's wanted to have it. And my point there, what we can learn from it is a really important lesson in the Internet of Things world, which is that sometimes technology is not quite ready for the thing that we want to do with it. We might have a really great application for the technology, a really great service in mind, and the tech just isn't there yet. And I see a lot of stuff happening all the time. The AI is not ready to deliver, and yet we're designing for something that doesn't yet exist, and it can't succeed.
That's actually quite an interesting bridge to where we've got the technologies that aren't ready, but we think we know what it can deliver for people. But I've got a nice question here, is that people are actually not very good at telling us what they want. They're very terrible. So how best to transfer the observational insights into this disruptive world of IoT, also in that context of the technology not even being ready yet?
So I think it is, you know, observation is the best we've got, and then you test and learn. I don't see any other way, because if people can't tell you, you just have to see what they do. So I think in marketing, there's a term called stated preference versus review preference. If you do a survey of me and you ask me, Lee, what kind of food would you like? I'll say, I'm healthy, I'm going to eat all these things. You observe me at dessert time. I don't actually do what I say. So that's the review preference versus the stated preference.
Yeah, I think I would only add to that I agree. First of all, you observe and then you prototype. You want to put something in people's hands as early as possible. The one caveat that I would give to that is, especially if it's something that's completely different to anything they've ever seen before, you need to give people time. So if you hand somebody something, you know, if you take somebody from 12 years ago and you hand them one of these things, they're not, the first response they have, or the response they'll have in the first hour or two, is not going to be the same as the response they have after a couple of weeks. And so sometimes, I mean, I'll give you an example. A friend of mine who still works in R&D at the BBC, they developed this new kind of radio that automatically adjusted its volume based on how close you were to it, and learnt your programming preferences, would record various things and sort of reprogram its content for you. And instead of just sort of locking people in a room with it for a couple of hours, they actually made these prototypes that were literally just cardboard boxes with bits of technology inside them, and they gave them to people to live with for 3 weeks. And they would, you know, they asked people to keep diaries, and they, you know, kept track of what they did. And when they came to take these things away, these were like, I'm not kidding, they were like packing tape and cardboard boxes. They were terrible. People were like, oh, do you have to take it? Can I not keep it? We really like it. So this idea of people will attach themselves to something that they love, even if it's not perfect, but at the same time, they're not going to be able to give you an immediate response. You have to be patient.
I would like to add something on that. I'm questioning if we should give people what they really want, seriously, because because we are seeing service. I mean, just see the primaries in the US now. What is being done with information, where you have a candidate that we all know and make fun of, and that he didn't even want to continue in the campaign, but now he's in the campaign. And he's just monitoring what people say and what people like to hear, and he's saying more of that. So, and that happens across, I mean,
But is that not the difference between hype and reality, potentially?
I just fear, like, I don't know if you have seen WALL-E, the movie WALL-E or the movie Idiocracy. Yes. I fear that. I really fear a future where
unfortunately,
we are like
we're out of time now.
Screen and a straw.
And I just wanted to close on maybe one sort of point of thought, because we're talking very much here about gaining insights into people and then applying those insights to develop IoT systems. And I'm just wondering if we might actually also just be aided by these IoT systems in gaining these insights into people. So actually employing IoT technologies also in the more qualitative user design development processes. Maybe close on that one.
Yeah, I was just going to say, well, Lorna and I have had this conversation. I'm willing to bet that you'll agree. Why is more important than what? So it's very popular in the whole metrics world to, even though you have all this massive wealth of data, to look at 1 or 2 points, because that's convenient and that's relatively easy to analyze. But what happened is interesting, but you don't really know what to do about it or how to respond to it unless you understand why. And I think that, yes, of course, if there's a broader array of sensors and such like things, we can observe more different kinds of data, but we need to be careful not to get lazy about the way that we interpret that. We need to actually try to figure out not just what's happening, but why, what's behind it.
I think all comes to the need and want. There are things that we need, and there are things that we want. And
but why?
so there are a lot of things that we want that we shouldn't have.
Okay.
So I think my closing thought is have an inquisitive mind. Always go to try to learn something, and you will see things that you've never seen before. And that's where innovation begins.
What a great note to finish on. Thank you very much. Thank you to the panelists. And I have one message I was asked to give people. There's a survey that I believe you've been given. If you could fill them in and hand them in to one of the ladies at the back there, if you have the chance. And then I believe we're all moving now to the main room for the closing keynote speech. Thank you. Thank you very much.